3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com. Welcome back to segment 2 of the most well-armed podcast in New Hampshire. We are GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, coming to you live almost every Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the lovely and palatious offices at the CNHT studio in Concord, New Hampshire. Happy to be here. Snowing like crazy outside. The drive home's going to stink, but we wanted to do a show because we have guests, and we like our guests, and we work hard to have guests, and we want to make sure you hear what they have to say. And one of those guests is our next guest, who is a blogger at redmaryland.com. They just got themselves a spiffy new website, but they've been doing some yeoman's work down there for the conservative and Republican agenda. Greg Klein, who is also the co-host of Conservative Refuge on Red Maryland Radio. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, great to have you. So I don't get enough time to listen to what you guys do down there, and that's mostly a function of my having a full-time job and trying to be a blogger and a podcaster at the same time, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But you know, you have a much harder job, I think, down there than we do because you're in Maryland.
Well, it is tough being a conservative Republican in Maryland, that's for sure. But we've had some big victories in the last election, and so a lot of hard work has paid off. You know, we started Red Maryland in 2007 when Martin O'Malley, who I think we'll have a few more words to talk about.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
you have I Survived Martin O'Malley T-shirts on your website. I love that.
yeah, we survived. All we got were higher taxes in this T-shirt.
Yeah, that's an awesome T-shirt. So, did you start the show and the podcasting and the website because of Martin O'Malley, or was this just he was just the impetus to get it going?
Well, the timing was a little bit of a coincidence. Those of us who started, Brian Griffiths and Strife, who's one of the senior editors at RedState.com, who founded Red Maryland, and Mark Nugent, who's now going to work for our new Republican governor. We all got together at that time. We were all doing our own things, and we brought together conservative bloggers from all over the state, and that was really just kind of a coincidence when we got together and joined forces. But for the last 8 years, we've been chronicling the true O'Malley legacy and resisting the efforts of what was a very far-left agenda when there wasn't a lot of resistance to it throughout our state. So finally, in November, the voters here in Maryland, which is still a very Democratic state, a very blue state, rejected all of that and rejected the governor's lieutenant governor, who was running for governor, Anthony Brown, and selected a lifelong Republican, Larry Hogan, to be our next governor, who just got sworn in this week. And so the state is coming back at least to the middle a little bit, and we're very excited to have been a part of that.
Hey, Greg, this is Skip, and again, thanks for coming on the show. Now, I noticed that Larry came out with what I would have imagined had been quite the corker of a statement when he said, hey, budget directors and chairman, get ready to see your department's budgets being cut right off the bat. What an amazing statement. You know, you're in office, just a few hours, and he's telling the whole state government, get ready to go under the knife. How well has that gone over among the left?
Well, we had an administration for 8 years that even the Baltimore Sun here had to acknowledge when we had tough economic times, when revenues were going down, they still couldn't say no to anybody when it came to spending. So to have a governor who was elected, who ran primarily on controlling spending, who ran primarily on getting the budget under control, and won, for a Republican, he won by 5 points in our election, which for a Republican in Maryland is an absolute landslide. The largest margin we've seen here probably since the 50s for a Republican governor. And there have only been a couple, so it's not a real high bar. But it was pretty. He has a pretty strong mandate to bring things under control, and he did that the day after he got sworn in as governor. Introduced a budget that brought balance to our state that hasn't been there for almost 10 years. And the left, they know how the election turned out. They know that there's a popular mandate for rolling in spending. The fact is, they're not happy about the budget. But what's interesting about the state budget is, not only is there 2% across the board for state agencies, but it actually balances the budget. It actually spends about 0.5% more than we did last year. But there are no state layoffs, there's no furloughs, there's no complete elimination of state agencies. There's still record funding for education. There's still a lot of things in this budget that the worst fears and the scare tactics of the left didn't come true. So they're still complaining and carping, but they don't have the obvious things to go after that one might expect, because Governor Hogan and his team put together an extremely smart and efficient budget. And really the big part of bringing the budget into balance was just stop spending more money than we have. Just doing that alone went a long way towards balancing the budget, which is something we always knew was the case. But Governor O'Malley was always insisting that he was making the tough choices and cutting things to the bone, and there's no more that we could do. Yet he raised taxes, he had furloughs, he fired state employees, and still could never bring the budget to balance. So it took just a little dose of common sense to bring this into line. And the left is kind of having to acknowledge that at some level, and trying the same old, balancing the budget on the backs of the poor and putting our, top-notch education system in danger and all that kind of stuff. But the numbers really aren't as supportive as they probably would like.
All right, Mike, we have one of our co-hosts.
So Greg, I got a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. This is Mike. So I have to yell a little because I'm phoned in. So I'm reading a little bit from Delmarva now. It looks like a left-leaning publication. So they're castigating Hogan for cutting environmental spending, phosphorus regulations, aqua projects. And then, in the little piece that they don't really explain, they say that O'Malley had asked for some huge increase in spending for those departments for 2015. And it looks like all Hogan's doing is basically taking away their increase.
Greg?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And you mentioned the phosphorus regulator. Just to give you some background on that, Governor O'Malley, after the election, on his way out the door, introduced a bunch of regulations on phosphorus, which was really going to have a horrible impact on our poultry industry on the Eastern Shore. And and Governor Hogan, on his first day in office, said, "No, we're going to get rid of those." Because really, Martin O'Malley, in the last 8 years, he's really governed in a way that, the D.C. suburbs and Baltimore City were his hub, and all the rural parts of the state, western Maryland, southern Maryland, our eastern shore of Maryland, it's just been one attack after another on their way of life and on their property rights and their industry. And this was another one which he pulled back, which, of course, the environmentalists who, practically ran the state when O'Malley was here, realized that their salad days are over, and we were going to have somebody in office who's going to bring some balance. So there's definitely carping about that. But as you point out, the funding really isn't being slashed in any significant way.
They still got lots of money. They just don't have a large increase like they were expecting.
Right. Yeah, when they don't get everything they want, it's the end of the world.
It's a cut in their parlance. That if the rise in spending is less than what they wanted, it's a cut. Now, yeah, apply that to the family budget.
So
right, exactly.
So O'Malley,
exactly. That'll be part, and that's something that's kind of understood by the folks in the Hogan administration, and they previewed a lot of that. And the reality is, I think most Marylanders are going to understand the difference when they really see this budget, and frankly, when they see that this budget doesn't affect their lives as far as any supposed cuts, and yet they're able to have balance without increased taxes. They'll think, why weren't we doing this all along?
There's two things I really want to touch on. The first, I don't know which one. I'll start with this one. I don't see any groups like Mad Moms for O'Malley or Ready for O'Malley, but he's running for president, you think? Is he?
Oh, he's definitely running for president. There's no question about that, and that's something he's been governing like a presidential candidate for at least his second term here in Maryland. I'll give you a couple examples of what we're talking about. A lot of his agenda items were not things he ran on when he first got elected, but they're things he realized that he needed to get done in order to prepare for a run for president of the United States. Gay marriage was one of those things. He didn't run on that when he first got elected. Maryland is an interesting place, and for folks up in New Hampshire and other parts of the country who aren't familiar with Maryland, Maryland is very democratic. It always has been. But unlike a lot of the other southern states, and you'll get some of us down here to argue, but I certainly consider Maryland a southern state, we haven't had that realignment that you've seen in other parts of the South with people who were Democrats becoming Republicans, like you even see in Virginia. And a large part of that is because demographics and so forth, because Baltimore City is so large and the D.C. suburbs are such a huge part of the population of the state. But gay marriage was not something that was necessarily hugely popular. And in fact, the leaders of the General Assembly were hoping for a long time that our courts would bail out that issue. And when they ultimately didn't, in a decision about 3 years into Martin O'Malley's term, and Martin O'Malley saw, Governor Cuomo and other places passing gay marriage laws, he started pushing the issue. It was it very narrowly passed our legislature, which was heavily Democratic, and it did survive a petition that got on the ballot for the first time in a number of years. We were able to get that issue, among others, onto the ballot, and it survived that in 2012, which of course was the Obama re-election and was a huge year for Democrats. But that issue, him pushing a very restrictive gun control bill after Sandy Hook, and a number of other things, were obviously things, and again, this is even acknowledged by the Baltimore Sun when they did an article recently on his legacy. These were things that he had to check off on his checklist to run as a hero of the left, and those became state policy, even though they weren't things that that people in Maryland necessarily wanted. Some of those obviously survived popular votes, but it was something that he needed to run for president. So there's no question he's running for president, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he makes out.
It's. I was going to say the gay marriage thing. O'Malley went to a fundraiser in Chicago for political outgiving. Tim Gill and the 200 millionaire, billionaire, pro-gay marriage folks. And our governor, John Lynch, who had already managed to break his own promise and pass or support gay marriage in New Hampshire, disappeared for a weekend, and it wasn't on his calendar. And we discovered from an article in the Washington Blade that he was there, and that O'Malley was there, and we had a lot of fun with that because I'm like, oh, John Lynch is there to teach him how to pass gay marriage in Maryland. So we're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about your citizen journalism project, which I am fascinated with the idea. So stay on the line. This is GrokTALK. We are talking to Greg Klein from Red Maryland. We're going to take 60 seconds, and we'll be right back.
Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. If you have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
This is GrokTALK. We are on the phone with Greg Klein, blogger and podcaster from Red Maryland. And redmaryland.com. Check it out. You guys have podcasts almost every night, not every night, but a couple nights a week, right?
Yeah, we have shows 4 nights a week. I do a show on Monday nights called The Conservative Refuge. We do Red Maryland Radio, which is our flagship. Brian Griffiths and I do that on Thursday. We have a fantastic news show that we do. Our news director, Dwayne Keenan, who is a career radio news guy, who does a 1-hour show for us every week called the Red Maryland News Hour every Friday. It's a fantastic 1-hour summary of what's happened in the week in politics and government here in Maryland. Then Brian does his own kind of commentary show on Sundays called the Air Raid. So all that's available at redmaryland.com, on our Red Maryland Network, as we call it, which is also available blogtalkradio.com/Red Maryland, and we're available on iTunes and Stitcher.
That's awesome. And then, of course, one of the great resources that every state has that's underdeveloped is the citizen journalists. And we are all citizen journalists, so we understand it. There's always a few here and there, and like you guys all came together to create Red Maryland. One of your ideas that I read last week or the week before was that you were going to create basically citizen news desks, really, who would cover local issues that were underreported or ignored by the regular media. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's one of the things that, as you point out, we're all citizen journalists, that there's a rise of that. Certainly that's a great way to counter the biased established media such as it still exists. But even local, we cover a lot of local politics, as I know you guys do up there. And there isn't a lot of coverage of what's going on, even on the state level, but certainly on the county level. There's just not a lot of coverage. You might have a local newspaper that gives it a story or two every day. But a lot of places you don't even have that. And so one of the reasons that I got involved in blogging was because I ran for local office many years ago, and I would go around and I would talk to people who were good conservatives who, listen to Rush Limbaugh and watch Sean Hannity and Fox News and read, the Washington Times or whatever, but they wouldn't know what was going on locally in politics and government. And the fact is, local, I'm sure this is as true where you guys are as it is here, local government is really where the rubber meets the road and has as much an impact on their lives as what's going on in Washington.
Politics is a full contact sport here.
and yet there's so little coverage of it. Certainly, there's extremely little coverage of it from kind of a conservative, libertarian, center right, whatever you want to call it, perspective. So that was certainly one of the founding ideas of Red Maryland, was to bring people around the state to cover these things and talk about them. Mark Nugent, who was one of our founders, who's now the deputy policy director for our governor, which is just awesome to say. He was a Breitbart award-winning citizen journalist, and that was a big part of what he brought to Red Maryland. So we wanted to rededicate ourselves to not only covering as much local goings-on as we can around the state, but to recommit to that citizen journalism. And as we've built Red Maryland over the last 8 years, redmaryland.com, we've got a great audience. We've got great recognition. We know other media is looking at what's on our blog. So we wanted to encourage folks from around the state. And ultimately, we want to get, folks from every county in our state to join us as citizen journalists. We put the call out. We knew some people, and we've had a fantastic response. We've got a number of places already covered, so we've got a lot of new folks writing about what's going on in their localities, in their local party committees, and their local county commissions or county councils, and it's been great. It's been a great response, and it's something that would be great as a movement that we have everywhere, because it gives folks a resource to find a central location to see what's going on in their neck of the woods.
Logistically, what would you say is the biggest challenge to rolling out something like that?
Well, the biggest challenge, and I think the thing that Red Maryland has in place, is you've got to have a central location to put all this information at, to make it easy for everybody. If everybody has their own blog, then when you have your own blog, and you guys know this, you got to promote it, and you got to update it, and you got to do all that. We kind of do all of that for our contributors, so we make it really easy for somebody who, and there's always somebody or multiple people, depending on where you are. There's always that guy who goes to every county council meeting or is watching it on local cable, and they're always following it. And they're a guy who thinks like we do, and we want that guy to, or a gal or a woman to write something about it. And we make it easy for them. All they've got to do is log in and type up what they're seeing, and that's the biggest hurdle to get over. And I think making that platform available, is the biggest logistical thing to overcome. And the rest is just going out and finding the people who are there. And if you're involved in politics and activists, you run across these people on a normal basis.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Greg, this is Skip. You bring up when Steve asked the question, immediately I went, my mind wandered back to a story I saw at techdirt.com. Alabama legislators say you must be a salaried employee of old school media to get approved for press credentials. And I ask this because we do a lot of citizen journalism. We go to events, we record them, we live stream them, because we're all techies, and we built up a system to be able to take basically a TV in a box with us. So we record stuff and put it up on Granite Rock, so people who can't go for whatever reason can still participate in the event. We get a lot of thanks for doing that. We don't do the opining. We don't do a lot of commenting. We just present it as is, unfiltered, and all of that stuff. But are you guys running into this same kind of deal? If somebody wants to go to a committee hearing of one type or another, be it local or further up the chain, county or state, that the legislators are starting to say, you're not a journalist. You do computer programming. What do you mean you're a journalist in your spare time? And it's like, are you seeing any kind of pushback where people are saying, you're not qualified to do the act of journalism, where we all know journalism is not what you are, it's what you do?
Yeah. We haven't had a lot of, most of these local meetings are either broadcast on cable TV or they're publicly available, people getting access. We did have the issue a couple years ago, and we do have Dwayne Keenan, our Red Maryland news director, is a credentialed member of the State House journalism, the reporting staff there, the reporting pool. And we did have to do some work to get him in there, and they tried to change the law to make it, they had to at least get a $1 a year salary in order to part of that. So we were able to swing that. But it has, we kind of pushed back even against that, and we wrote about it. It didn't become too onerous. But there's what you guys are talking about is that there is at least some thought from folks who don't want to let citizen journalists become more popular, thinking about what they can do. It hasn't been a full-blown pushback. Actually, the biggest problem that we have in doing citizen journalists is not access to meetings. It's the Public Information Act stuff and the getting access to documents and information that we're looking for to report stories. That's really where the boundaries are put up and the impediments to getting records and they either say we can't get them, or they take a long time, or they impose some exorbitant copying cost. So that we find is a much more difficult challenge. It's interesting. During the primary campaign here, the lieutenant governor was running against our state attorney general, and during the campaign, there was reporting from local media about the attorney general's history with his executive security detail running, getting speeding tickets and doing all this stuff. And that newspaper that was helping them was able to get the public records about that very, very quickly. Within days of their request, they were able to get all of these records. And we knew that if we had gone and tried to get something like that on the lieutenant governor or the current governor or something like that, if we ever got him, it would take months. So
yeah, no kidding.
That's a bigger challenge than the folks trying to keep people out of meetings, but it's still an issue. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we have found similar things here. I got credentialed for our state house, and then after that, that Granite Rock. Yeah, it got much harder, but we agree. We call them RTKs up here, right to nose. And they are difficult, especially at the local level. They will do everything to obfuscate us getting that information.
Yeah, they talk about having laws that promote transparency, and we had a Governor O'Malley who said he was all about transparency and stuff, and then when you tried to get information about some of his commissions and some of his cronyist deals that he was making with windmill operators and others, so you can cross-reference it to campaign donation lists and those sorts of things. Suddenly, they weren't quite as quick to give you all of that information. So that's really where the front lines in this battle in citizen journalism are, and that's why it's so important that we have people involved willing to take the time to take advantage of what we can get under. And
you there? You're breaking up a little. Oh no, I hope we didn't lose Greg. We've had this problem before. I think you might still be there. Greg, you there?
I am here.
Ah, there you are. We lost you for a second. On our end, we lost you. We got about a minute left. How can people reach you guys? Do a little plug for your site, and that'll be it.
Okay, well, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys having me on. RedMaryland.com is our site. Please go check that out. We're at Twitter, at Red Maryland. We're on Facebook, Facebook.com/RedMaryland. And if you want to listen to all of our radio programming, it's all on what we call the Red Maryland Network, which is at blogtalkradio.com/Red Maryland. And we're available on iTunes and Stitcher. Just punch in Red Maryland, and you'll find us there.
All right,
thanks for having me, guys.
Yep, thanks a lot. You have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye. All right, that was great. I want to get more people like that on the program. I think that it's exciting to know that, oh, hi, Mike. How you doing? That there's other people.
That was fabulous. I didn't want to interrupt. It was full of information.
Oh, I know. We probably could have done it. Well, this guy does podcasts every couple times a week, so the guy knows what he's talking about. He can talk. It's great to have guests like that, especially at the local level, who are able to just articulate the issues and talk about the candidates and the local stuff, the grassroots stuff. I mean, that's really what we try to do here, and that's what we encourage others to do. And so I'm going to, troll around and see if I can find some other folks like that in other states we can get on the program.
Yeah, I'd like to get Billy Bear's bud Dan Haggerty on from New Jersey. He'd be a real firecracker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Get in touch with him. Hook us up.
Yep.
All right, coming up in the next segment, we have Victoria Sullivan, who has proposed a bill. I believe it is HB 332 or HB 322. I don't have the notes in front of me, but she'll correct me because I'm probably wrong. Whatever I was saying.
I got the wrong system here. No email.
No email? Oh, I have it. I pulled it for my show notes, but I don't have it in front of me. But we're going to talk to her about that bill. And that's coming up next, so don't go away. We'll be right back. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve. He's Skip. Mike's on the phone. And stay tuned. More of us and more of them in a few minutes.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by SaberPac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTV.